Hey everybody, it's been a minute, but I'm finally back. Just like every hero, I've returned. In this video, I'm going to try my best to compare NBA stars to their NFL quarterback counterparts. It's just a fun little exercise that I hope you all enjoy. The video begins right after this. Basketball fans, we've seen some incredible action on the court as we head into the heart of the NBA season. The games are getting even more intense, and with so many high-stakes matchups ahead, you won't want to miss out. Right now, you can get in on the action with my partner at DraftKings Pick 6, a fresh, exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All new customers who play just $5 will get $50 in Pick 6 credits to keep you in the game. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and sign up with code BARRY to claim your offer. This is your shot to level up your NBA experience only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Getting started is simple. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and sign up with code BARRY. Pick at least 2 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like will they score 20 or more points or have 3 or more assists. Lock them in and compete against others for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and sign up with code BARRY only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Starting off with the biggest of stars, LeBron James, I have no choice but to compare him to Tom Brady, both due to their insane longevity, which is really what separates both of them. They both have essentially every important record that is, in the book, both regular season and postseason. Of course, there are some differences. Brady has been a lot luckier in terms of how he's gotten his championships. Both of them have made 10 championship round appearances. Brady has 7, while LeBron has 4, although I would argue that LeBron has been a more consistent playoff performer than Brady was on a game-to-game basis. A part of me does die inside to do this, but if I'm going to consider LeBron the GOAT, then it makes sense to compare him to the guy who a lot of people think is the GOAT for football. Now, excuse me while I go take an acid shower. Stephen Curry and Patrick Mahomes. Now, let's just get the elephant right out of the room. Yes, they do look alike, and that does play a part of it. And maybe a couple years ago, this comparison made more sense when Mahomes threw the ball deeper a lot more often. But as we all know, Steph is known for the 3 ball better than anybody else, and for being able to explode and burst games open more than anybody else and go off for 20-point quarters and do all this shit. And although Mahomes has taken a more conservative approach lately with his offense, thank you Matt Nagy, he still has the ability to blow a game open for his team better than really anybody else in the league, either by his arm or his legs, unless he's facing the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59, of course. But they're both multiple-time champions, and they're both all-time greats who at their best are exciting to watch, although Mahomes is a lot better at not front-running than Curry is. In other words, Mahomes is a lot more clutch than Curry is in the fourth quarter of playoff games, close playoff games. Aaron Rodgers is Kevin Durant. Now, this is one of my favorite comparisons because I really feel like there are a lot of parallels here. You got guys who are champions, but they're seen as losers. Nobody denies their ethereal talents. They're unbelievable Hall of Fame players. Their talents are legendary. They're incredible to watch at times, and yet there's just something missing. There's something missing from both of these guys, and it leaves you wondering, why haven't they won more than they should have, considering all of their abilities and considering the talent they have. Aaron Rodgers in terms of throwing a football and avoiding interceptions, and Kevin Durant being able to shoot over anybody anytime he wants. They also might value their efficiency a little bit too much, and they might be a little bit too concerned with their efficiency instead of winning, and that's why they might not be as successful in the ring section as one might expect. Giannis Antetokounmpo is Josh Allen, and this is really just a physical comparison because right now in the NFL, Josh Allen is one of, if not the most physically gifted quarterbacks ever, and that's really what Giannis's game is based off of, his physical gifts and his insane measurables. Let's be real here. I mean, the guy, obviously Giannis is skilled. I'm not one of those idiots that's like, oh, he's only good because he can run and jump high, because there's been a lot of players in NBA history that can do that, and they suck. But let's be real here. He does rely a lot on his athleticism, and Josh Allen's also an incredible runner who relies on his athleticism to be dominant. They both rely on their athleticism to be dominant, maybe more so than other quarterbacks. The major difference, though, is that Giannis has a championship and Josh Allen is still looking for his first. But I would say that outside of his one championship season, Giannis's playoff career a little bit underwhelming. And even though Josh Allen individually has been a very good playoff performer, the fact that the Bills haven't made a Super Bowl in his tenure there yet is also a little bit underwhelming, similar to the Bucks in the Giannis era, minus 2021. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is Joe Burrow. Now, I immediately thought of both of them wearing a bunch of stupid shit, their fashion sense, and how they get a lot of attention for that, but also how they're They're newer guys. They're newer superstars. Neither of them have won a championship yet. They both put up nice numbers, but they're still looking for that first championship. And they both have very, very dedicated fan bases, which is not entirely unrelated to their fashion sense and dressing up all flamboyantly. So whatever. This one might be a little bit of a stretch, but I couldn't really think of anybody for Nikola Jokic, so I went with Drew Brees. Now you have to hear me out on this. Drew Brees, like, Jokic is the numbers guy. He's the huge numbers, efficiency, and the big drawback for him is, well, he's only gotten one championship and blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of the same thing with Drew Brees, where Brees had all these huge numbers and great efficiency, historic numbers, and he had great playoff numbers, just like Jokic has great playoff numbers, but they only have one championship. Now, for Jokic, he can obviously change that. With Brees, he can't because he's long retired, but I feel like there are some parallels there. And also the fact that Jokic in basketball is not a great athlete for the NBA. He's got some athletic ability, but just like with Drew Brees, who is undersized, they have some physical limitations going against them for their particular sports, and yet both of them excel at the highest level of their particular sports. This one kind of hurt me. Jason Tatum is equal to Jalen Hurts, and by that I mean people understand that they're great players, everybody outside of their own team, and I say this as an Eagles fan, so I think Jalen Hurts is a great player, but the Eagles are a very, very good team, and would Jalen Hurts be able to be as successful or as well known on a team that didn't have as much talent? I don't know, probably not. And the same thing goes with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum was drafted to a great team in Boston. He's never had to carry a team. That doesn't mean he's not a good player, and he puts up big numbers, and both of them have won a championship each. The main difference is that Hurts has been outstanding on the biggest stage in his sport, the Super Bowl, in 2 appearances, while Tatum has been underwhelming on the biggest stage in the sport in his 2 appearances thus far. But Tatum doesn't really have to carry a team. He's a good player. If he was drafted somewhere like Charlotte, would he have all the accolades he does now? I doubt it. So there are some similarities there. Guys who are good players, even very good players, or great players, but they have been blessed with great situations that other players haven't. Luka Doncic, this kind of hurt me to do, but I would say Luka Doncic, this is just more from a physical standpoint. He reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger, not off the field, okay? That's a very important caveat, I have to say. Not off the field. Luka seems like actually a decent guy off the field, unlike Ben. But on the field, think about it. Their games, neither of their games are really, they weren't athletic or high-flying. They were both known for being chubby or fat at a moment's notice, struggling with their weight. And Luka is a guy who, he has a lot of volume, a lot of quantity. And Ben Roethlisberger, later on in his career, was a guy who threw a bunch of passes. He has a bunch of games throwing 60-plus pass attempts, just a lot of quantity. Their efficiency is always been good, not great, but they're still both Hall of Fame caliber players, obviously. I know that Luka's probably better at basketball than Ben Roethlisberger was at quarterback, but still, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a Hall of Famer. So I felt like because both of them have weight problems, and it's funny to make fun of them for being fat, even though Luka's really not fat, whereas Ben rather really was for most of his career. I would say that that's really the main comparison why I chose it. Anthony Davis equals Steve Young, and this is another one where I kind of gotta explain a little bit, because at first glance you're like, what the hell are you talking about? All right, both of these guys, Anthony Davis and Steve Young, were extremely highly touted coming into the pros. Anthony Davis coming out of Kentucky, Steve Young coming out of BYU. Both of them found success with their second major team, not their original team that drafted them. Now, in Young's case, he did play in the USFL, and then he went to Tampa Bay. So technically the 49ers were his third team, but we're not including minor league shit. The Buccaneers were Steve Young's first team, and they struggled a lot in his 2 years there. Anthony Davis, his first team obviously was the Pelicans, New Orleans, and Anthony Davis, unlike Steve Young, this is where they kind of differ, is Anthony Davis was a great player, but he didn't win much in New Orleans, whereas Steve Young really wasn't a great player in Tampa Bay, and he got traded away to San Francisco. But this is where a lot of their similarities come into play, because Steve Young was a lot more of a efficiency guy than other players, but the volume, he didn't have a lot of volume. And if you look at Anthony Davis's efficiency stats, they're very, very good, and they might possibly overrate him a tick, though, just like Steve Young's efficiency stats make him out to be the greatest quarterback of all time, even though he isn't, and the system that he was in helped him. The other thing is, Steve Young only played 3 full seasons as a starter, so his sample size, really not a lot of games for Steve Young compared to other great players. And as we all know, the biggest gripe about Anthony Davis is street clothes. He's not able to be on the field enough, and that's kind of really the biggest reason why I chose Steve Young. They both have 1 championship as a starter. They've got great stats. Their 1 championship they did win came with their second professional team, and their sample size and their careers, they didn't play as much as you would have liked to have seen, but they're both considered all-time great players, and that's why I went here. Kawhi Leonard, I was thinking a lot for who I was going to put for Kawhi, and really there's no exact comparison rather, but I decided to say he's Kurt Warner, because if you look at Kawhi Leonard, he's a guy came out of nowhere. Same thing, Kurt Warner came out of nowhere immediately early on in Kurt Warner's career. This is the main difference between the two. Kurt Warner had great numbers early in his career, whereas Kawhi Leonard was basically a glorified role player who eventually worked his way up to being a star and then a superstar, whereas Kurt Warner immediately was a superstar. But the similarities are that they both won a championship early on. They both won a championship MVP early on in their careers, and then they had a period in their career where they kind of disappeared and people forgot about them, and then they had a revival and they came back and they had a great playoff run. In Kawhi's case, that was 2019 with the Raptors, and Kurt Warner's case, that was 2008 with the Cardinals. So they took teams that had never won before to the championship. Now, in Kurt Warner's case, we all know the Cardinals lost, but Kurt Warner had monster numbers that postseason, and he gave them the lead that his defense eventually gave up, whereas Kawhi won for Toronto. But basically, it's kind of like they had such up and down careers, and then there was a long part of their career where they just kind of went away and disappeared, but they still made the Hall of Fame. Kurt Warner went to 3 Super Bowls. Kawhi Leonard's been in 3 NBA Finals. The biggest thing, though, that the reason I went with Kawhi and Kurt Warner is that both of their numbers increased dramatically come playoff time. So that's what makes them unique as well to their respective sports, is they both climb tremendously in terms of efficiency and volume in the playoffs, and that's why Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame, and that's why despite some lackluster regular season totals, Kawhi Leonard will be in the Hall of Fame as well. Russell Westbrook, this was a pretty easy one for me. I said Russell Westbrook reminds me of Brett Favre. Again, just on their respective courts or fields or whatever, field of play. I don't think that Westbrook is as bad of a human being as Brett Favre is, but this is pretty simple. The thing is, they're just as likely, in Westbrook's case, the last couple of years, he's more likely to lose the game for his team, than he is for the other team, and Brett Favre had a lot of that as well. They're essentially the same guy. They're guys that'll throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions, or they'll throw a back-breaking interception. And this comparison more so applies to Westbrook when he was at his best with the Thunder, when he was winning MVP and putting up triple-doubles and winning scoring titles. That's when it was basically like you just never knew what was going to happen, but that's why he was kind of fun to watch. And same thing with Favre, because he had just that explosive arm. Westbrook had that explosive athleticism, but they never were particularly super efficient, even at their best. I mean, Favre was more efficient for a quarterback than Westbrook was in terms of shooting the ball, but they were just like forces of nature at their best, despite not having as great of efficiency as other great players. And they were also just as likely to make boneheaded mistakes in big moments. The difference is Favre did win a Super Bowl. Westbrook has never won a championship. And they did get worse in the postseason as their careers went on. Russell Westbrook, he started off as a pretty decent postseason player in the first half of his career, and then the playoffs, obviously, the latter part of his career have been a big boo-boo for him, and it was a similar story with Favre, with his numbers declining. But I just feel like they're both guys who, when you think about them, they were just as likely to win the game for you as they were to lose it for you, and that kind of takes some skill. Joel Embiid is Lamar Jackson, and this is somewhat of, like, I fully admit it's maybe a little bit of a tap out, because the main similarity between these two guys, they don't play anything alike. Lamar Jackson is exciting and he's running around and he's super athletic, whereas Embiid is constantly flopping and flailing and has knee issues all the time. The biggest issue, or not the biggest issue, the biggest similarity is that these are two guys that are MVP winners. Statistically, they're all-time great in the regular season, but come playoff time, that's their big bugaboo. With Embiid, he's never even been to a conference finals. With Lamar Jackson, he hasn't been to a Super Bowl yet. Their numbers in the playoffs, Embiid is a historic playoff dropper. His numbers in the playoffs get worse, and although Lamar Jackson was pretty good, I felt, in this past postseason, historically, if you compare his playoff numbers right now with his regular season efficiency numbers, they fall off a cliff pretty much, even though I thought he was pretty good this past postseason. Another difference is that Embiid's career might be over because of his knee problems, whereas Lamar Jackson still is young and he still has time to change the narrative and go on a run and win a championship. So it's, again, these comparisons aren't set in stone. They're not maybe 100% alike, but the biggest similarity between these two players is they're amazing regular season players. Postseason success, team success just has not been there, and their postseason stats reflect that. This was a challenging one. Chris Paul. Who was comparing to Chris Paul? I would say Phillip Rivers. Now, of course, Phillip Rivers, he had a lot of sex with his wife and they have a lot of kids, so this is is not a comparison. I'm not saying that Chris Paul has 20 kids, okay? This is a comparison that Chris Paul and Phillip Rivers, they were around forever, and their numbers were great, and, you know, you just felt like, and this is the big similarity and why I went with it, is that no matter how great their numbers were, whether it's in a game, whether it's on the season, or whether it's their career numbers, or how efficient they were on a particular game, in a big moment, you never trust these guys. You never trusted these guys in a big moment, despite what everything else says, and that's why they lost and they never won championship. And again, I keep saying this over and over again because I know people are gonna, they're gonna harp on it. I'm not saying that these are perfect comparisons. There's really no perfect comparisons, but this, like the similarity of these guys, they were around forever and they just never won anything despite their great career totals because they just, when you were watching them play in a big moment, did you ever feel like they were gonna win the game or win a championship? No. I'm sorry, but no. And that's how I feel about it. So that's why I decided to make the comparison. And also, Chris Paul has had history of injuries come playoff time. Phillip Rivers played an AFC championship game on a torn ACL. That's just a small similarity too. That also could factor into the comparison, I guess. I don't fucking know. Moving on, Jimmy Butler to Russell Wilson. And I feel like this is a pretty solid comparison. You think about it, Jimmy Butler was drafted to the Bulls, who were fresh off of the D-Rose MVP season. So he was drafted to a really good team. And he kind of started out as an unknown and he worked his way up. With Russell Wilson, he was a third round pick. He was on the map right away. He came out of nowhere, you know, he was a third round pick. He beat out Matt Flynn as a rookie, become the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. And then he had a very good rookie season. And then his second year, that was the historic defensive year, Legion of Boom. He wins a Super Bowl, but he was never truly considered a dominant player, even though he was a guy who had nice numbers. It was always, well, I don't know. He's always good, but he has a lot of help around him, and I wouldn't consider him a true superstar like a Brady or a Brees or a Peyton or a Rodgers or a Mahomes. He was always kind of like he was always in that little next tier. He was like in that second tier. And that's kind of what Jimmy Butler's been. A guy who's never been a true superstar, but he's always been a star level player, and he's played for a bunch of teams, which is now the case with Russell Wilson. Butler has played with Chicago, he's played with Minnesota, Philadelphia, Miami, and now he's playing for the Golden State Warriors. Russell Wilson has played for the Seahawks, obviously, and then he was with the Broncos and the Steelers, and now he's with the Giants. So these are guys who have played for a lot of different teams, guys who were never really considered true superstars. They've never really gotten serious MVP consideration, but they've been on winning teams for a lot of their careers, and they're both going to end up in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, by the time they're done. The only difference is that Russell Wilson, and they've both been to 2 championship rounds. Jimmy's been to 2 NBA finals. Russell Wilson went to 2 Super Bowls. The difference is Russell Wilson has a ring and Butler doesn't, but I would say they're like the same level of player with a similar amount of accomplishments for their particular sports. Karl-Anthony Towns, to me, is Dak Prescott. This really is simple. People who are old enough to remember the Karl-Anthony Towns hype when he was first coming out of Kentucky, he had a great rookie season, he had a great sophomore season, and there was actually a preseason poll. This was back in like 2016 when they do all that GM survey shit. There was for the preseason GM survey poll, it was which player right now would you take to start your team with in the NBA? And this was, I think, before the start of his second year, and that was Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns won that vote, and safe to say he was never able to really live up to that hype. And you look at Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott wasn't a first overall pick like Karl-Anthony Towns, but he had a huge rookie year, and the Cowboys went 13-3, and he had one of the best rookie seasons in history, and people said, oh, well, this guy he's going to be something super duper special. And just like with Karl-Anthony Towns, he hasn't had a very good playoff career, and although he's been a good to very good player, he hasn't really been able to match the early career hype that he had coming out as a rookie. And that's why I feel like we're still waiting for these guys. Okay, you guys have been in the public eye now for a decade, and your teams just still haven't broken through. You know, Karl-Anthony Towns made the conference finals finally last year with Minnesota, and then he got traded away. As we all know, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys are still looking for their first conference championship game with him, but they haven't won really in the playoffs, and they haven't lived up, even though they've been good players, they haven't lived up to the early career hype that they had, where it looked like, oh my God, these guys could be all-timers potentially, you know, if they're able to keep up this standard of their rookie seasons or their early career seasons. So they've been underachievers. This next one is a pretty, someone might say lazy, but I say fuck you. James Harden is Dan Marino. When you just look at James Harden's numbers, the first thing that comes to your mind is, Jesus Christ, his numbers are unbelievable. He had multiple 30-point per game seasons. He had a season where he averaged 36 points a game. He's led the league in assists multiple times. His numbers are insane. He has unbelievable efficiency metrics, and he's never won anything. And his playoff numbers aren't as good as his regular season numbers. He's another playoff dropper. And who does that remind you of? A guy who is an all-time great with huge numbers, whose numbers declined in the postseason? Yeah, it's Dan Marino. And I hate to say this as a Dan Marino fan, because Marino, as a quarterback, was way more fun to watch than James Harden was at his prime, where he was constantly foul baiting and flopping and getting 15 free throws a game just off of acting and snapping his head back. But the similarities between Harden and Marino are there. Of course, the difference is that Harden is still going strong, at least not as strong as before, but he's still a good player. He's still capable of having good games, and he's still capable of winning a championship because he's still playing on the Clippers. But I'm not going to fall for it, okay? I'm not going to fall for that shit. Every single year, people fall for the football trick. It's like Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown. Whenever it comes to James Harden, he has some great regular season games, or he puts up huge stats in the regular season just to completely no-show in the playoffs. It's going to happen again. It's happened every single year for the last 15 years, basically. And, you know, that's why. Harden's legacy is going to be big numbers and no championships, just like Dan Marino. Anthony Edwards, his NFL comparison is Antonio Cromartie, and it's pretty self-explanatory. That's right, folks. Both of them, they love to have unprotected sex. And really, that's what makes Anthony Edwards so dangerous on the court, is that he has the ability to have unprotected sex to impregnate any opponent at a moment's notice and knock them out for the series. Like this upcoming series versus the Lakers, what if he impregnates Luka and Luka has to miss the rest of the postseason? You know, that's a real concern if you're the Lakers and JJ Redick. So to me, Luka, you know, I would have a bunch of condoms on standby if I was the Lakers in this Minnesota series, just like Antonio Cromartie, who had so many kids you couldn't remember all their names. So that's that comparison. Damian Lillard. Who is Damian Lillard? I'd say he's like Kirk Cousins. And some might say, well, why? And it's like, well, Damian Lillard's got great numbers and he's never really won anything, just like our friend Kirk here. The difference is that Damian Lillard, I feel like, has more respect from his peers, at least the media in basketball, than Kirk does with the NFL, because, you know, he made like the top 75 all-time team. And Kirk is a guy who I think if he had played in a different era where there weren't as many, at least, you know, now Kirk is older and he's not as good, but when he was at his best, he was playing in an era that was probably the deepest era of quarterbacks that we've seen. There were so many good quarterbacks, and he was kind of, you know, just kind of pushed to the back as an okay quarterback, really, when his numbers were really good. Same thing with Damian Lillard. I feel like if Steph Curry never existed, he would be considered like the greatest shooter ever, or at the very least, like his game would be a lot more respected, because now instead, Steph Curry's basically cucked him, where Curry is like, you know, the LeBron James of shooting, or the Michael Jordan of shooting, and Damian Lillard is seen as like Clyde Drexler version of it, you know what I mean? And same thing with Kirk Cousins. Like Kirk Cousins, his name, he won't ever come up when you talk about like the greatest quarterbacks, but the numbers are there, just like Damian's numbers are there, but they're never going to be viewed as best of the best, even though their numbers might say so, because they didn't win enough. DeMar DeRozan. I really just chose DeMar DeRozan because I felt like I needed to have him on here because he just scored 25,000 points, and that's not a joke. So I decided to compare him to Derek Carr, and the biggest reason is that they both aren't good in big games. It's just the truth. Derek Carr, it's not completely dissimilar. You could really just exchange, I guess, Derek Carr with Kirk Cousins on this list, but I decided to go with DeMar DeRozan because I feel like Damian Lillard's a better player than DeMar DeRozan, just like I think that Kirk Cousins is better than Derek Carr, but they're like of the same archetype. Quarterbacks who put up great numbers who don't win shit. Same thing, DeMar DeRozan is a very good player. I don't know if you would consider him a great player, but efficiency-wise, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame because of his value numbers. And he's had a long career. He's had a successful career in terms of individually, like making a name for himself, just like Derek Carr did. He had a lot of nice seasons with the Raiders, but when the chips are down and it's go time, you absolutely do not trust either of these guys at all, and that's really the biggest similarity for me. And finally, I really couldn't come up with a great comparison for Victor Wembanyama because the guy's fucking 7'4" and he moves like a guard. So I decided, right, who's a quarterback who's young like Wemby and had a bunch of expectations and had a bunch of early career success and also has a freak kind of label to him. And so I went with Justin Herbert, and it's not a complete one-to-one comparison, but with Herbert, he's a guy, he'll make throws that make you go, holy shit, no other quarterback can make that throw. He's got, you know, and he's basically the Wemby of quarterbacks in terms of physically. He's 6'6", he's got long arms, he's a great athlete, he can move, you know, like he can do all of these things. And so that's basically where I got with the comparison with Victor Wembanyama. Now, it would make more sense if Herbert was like 7 foot or something and he was doing all of this stuff because what Wemby's doing is like the way Wemby plays is like unprecedented for his size. But I would also argue that for a guy who's like 6'6", there's never been as athletic of a quarterback at that height in the NFL, or a quarterback as physically gifted as Justin Herbert at his height in the NFL history. And so there are some similarities there. They're kind of vague, I understand, but I just thought that was that was like the biggest comparison I could come up with. I couldn't leave Wemby out because he's going to be a superstar. Now here's the other thing though. After his first couple seasons, Herbert was considered, oh, this guy's going to be a super duper star, and he's been good, but he still, it feels like he's kind of just been on a treadmill, like he's been at the same level the last couple years. Wemby improved a lot from his rookie year to his second year, just like Herbert did, but now with he's had blood clotting issues. Is he still going to keep progressing, or is he just going to maintain, is he going to stay at the same level that he was this year before his blood clots? We don't know, but obviously, hopefully he gets well and comes back. And so yeah, that's about it. That's it for my video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. It'd make me feel a lot better. I won't cry myself to sleep.